Hundreds of families are receiving a free Thanksgiving meal thanks to Catholic Charities. I'm Tim Harfman, and I'll tell you how they're making an impact coming up.
Pope Francis is heading to Asia. He's on a historic mission, bringing with him a message of peace and religious unity.
Pope Francis was most welcoming and gracious.
Buffalo's Bishop Richard Malone is describing his meeting with the Holy Father. The bishop is back home as some call for his resignation. New York's famous Archbishop Fulton Sheen is a step closer to sainthood tonight. He revolutionized preaching the faith on TV. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Tamara Lane. Catholics in the Brooklyn Diocese are determined that Thanksgiving be a happy holiday for families in need. Catholic Charities of Brooklyn and Queens organized a turkey and fixings giveaway for hundreds of people today. Currents News' Tim Harfman has the story from Flatbush.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving wouldn't be the same for Kadisha Brimby, her 2 children and grandchild, without help from Catholic Charities.
Struggling because I don't get enough for me and my kids, so most likely it wouldn't have been a turkey, it probably would have been a chicken.
Kadisha's one of hundreds receiving a turkey and all the fixings thanks to dedicated Catholics in the Brooklyn Diocese.
Catholic Charities is about compassion, and that's what we're doing. We're a caring community. We really care for the people that we serve.
A line wrapping around the courtyard at St. Jerome Church in East Flatbush. Inside the church, people pack the pews before starting their shopping supermarket style.
I'm going to have a Thanksgiving with my family, and I'm very grateful.
All of these items are donated. Al Catanese contributed 700 turkeys to the cause. A parishioner at St. Francis de Sales Church in Bell Harbor, Queens, he says the good deed is about more than writing a check.
I see the person, they smile, and say thank you, and I know I made an impact on 700 people's lives this Thanksgiving.
It's having an impact on Kadisha, who's grateful for the chance to feed her family.
The supermarkets are expensive, even if you're budgeting. I'm a coupon cutter. I go from spot to spot. I travel. I walk home with groceries to save that car fare. It's still not enough. You're not going to tell your kid at the end of the day, I don't have enough.
Now she has enough to have a happy Thanksgiving. In East Flatbush, Brooklyn, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
The next Catholic Charities Thanksgiving giveaway will take place at a Queens parish. Another 350 turkeys and fixings will be handed out at Resurrection Ascension Church in Regal Park this Friday, November 22nd, starting at 10:30 in the morning. Right now, Pope Francis is on his way to Asia. The historic trip will finally fulfill his desire to be a missionary to Japan. He'll be there and in Thailand for a week. Melissa Butts reports on the goals the Holy Father hopes to accomplish.
Pope Francis will embark on his 32nd trip on Tuesday, his second to the Far East. He'll visit Thailand and Japan. The objective is threefold. On one hand, to show closeness to the Christian minorities in the area. On another, to encourage dialogue between religions, and finally, to talk about world peace. In Bangkok, he will visit the Supreme Patriarch of the Buddhists and meet with King Rama X. He'll have a private translator, his own cousin, who's been a missionary there for more than 50 years. The Pope will also go green when traveling by using an electric car. On Saturday, while traveling to Japan, the Pope and those accompanying him will fly over China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. In Tokyo, he'll meet with the recently named Emperor of Japan, Naruhito. Pope Francis is to visit Ground Zero from the atomic bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki to pray for peace in the world. There, he'll greet the relatives of American photographer John O'Donnell, who captured the consequences of the tragedy. One of his photos deeply impacts the Pope, who described it as the fruit of war. John Paul II visited Thailand in 1984 and Japan in 1981. While there, he warned of the dangers of following life systems focused on effectiveness because he said they can cause a great inner emptiness in people. Melissa Butts, Currents News.
The Pope arrives in Thailand tomorrow local time. As Melissa reported, he's got a jam-packed schedule. Here to take a look at the significance of the Holy Father's mission to Asia is the national correspondent for The Tablet and Crux, Christopher White. Christopher, thanks so much for being with us.
A pleasure, Tamara.
So the Pope will now once more prioritize countries that have Catholics are in the minority. Why does he continue to do this?
It's a twofold purpose. One, he wants to go to places where Catholics don't tend to get a lot of support and not necessarily have the spotlight on them all the time. So he says, I'm going to go there as the global shepherd of the church and say these Catholics on the margins and the peripheries of society should get just as much attention, and I'm going to show them that I am their global shepherd. But secondly, when he goes there, when Catholics are in the minority, he works with the religious communities that are on the ground and the majority population. It's been a long time focus of Francis to elevate interreligious dialogue and to show that if we want to live together and work toward common cause, that this starts with local communities. So that's what we're going to see him do in Thailand and Japan.
And he's made that a priority for this trip.
Yeah, ever since the trip was first announced, he's sort of put that front and center.
Now his trip to Japan will be a historic homecoming of sorts. Can you explain why that is?
Yes, this is something that has motivated this Pope from his early years as a teenager aspiring to the priesthood. He was motivated by the works of Matteo Ricci, the Jesuit who went to the Far East as a missionary. He wanted to follow in his footsteps. However, when he put himself forward as a Jesuit provincial, they said, you're not physically fit, because he'd had a surgery where he'd had part of his lung removed. So he was forced to sort of stay home at Argentina. This has been something he's constantly said is a dream of his. So I think when he gets off that plane and touches down, I think, he may not kiss the ground, but it will at least have that sort of emotional effect.
Well, his time in Hiroshima will be closely watched. What can we expect?
This will be, many people believe, one of the most important addresses as Pope. He will, there in the spot of where we saw the grave effects of nuclear war, call for a total abolition of nuclear weapons. In effect, moving the church forward as being totally opposed to nuclear arms, not just as a matter of deterrence, but what he has termed as an existential threat to humanity. So this is a position that will, certainly put him sort of the most forefront in terms of world leaders on this issue. So it's going to spark a lot of international debate and attention.
And we'll have continued coverage of his trip.
Absolutely.
Christopher White, the national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Tamara.
Stay with Currents News and the Tablet for continuing coverage of the Pope in Asia. You'll get the latest on the Holy Father's week-long journey right here and online at thetablet.org. New details tonight on Bishop Richard Malone. The Bishop of Buffalo just released a video after returning home from a meeting with the Pope at the Vatican. The bishop is under fire over allegations of mishandling clerical sex abuse accusations. He's talking about his encounter with the Holy Father.
In a few words spoken privately to me, it was clear that the Pope understands the difficulties and distress we here in Buffalo, and I personally, have been experiencing. He was very understanding and kind. I am, of course, aware of the intense interest about the results of the apostolic visitation recently conducted here and submitted to the Holy See. The Congregation for Bishops has received the report, which is held in strict confidentiality. I had a brief discussion with Cardinal Mark Ouellet, prefect of the congregation. More on that to come.
Bishop Malone asked for prayers and patience while the path forward is determined. Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio was appointed by the Vatican on October 3rd to conduct an apostolic visitation that Bishop Malone described. The bishop made several trips to Buffalo and interviewed nearly 80 priests and parishioners. He wrapped up that fact-finding mission on October 31st and then traveled to the Vatican with New York's bishops to meet with the Pope and report on the status of their churches. Bishop DiMarzio also delivered his report on the Buffalo Diocese to Vatican officials. While he was in Rome, the Associated Press published a story that an attorney is planning to file a lawsuit, claiming that Bishop DiMarzio sexually abused his client decades ago. Bishop DiMarzio is firmly denying the claim and says he will fight the allegation. The lawsuit hasn't been filed yet, raising questions about why the AP reported it. In moments, Mike Rizzo, the director of the journalism program at St. John's University, will be here to talk more about the topic. That's still ahead in this newscast. The impeachment battle on Capitol Hill barreled into new rounds of TV testimony this morning. At the heart of the hearing, President Trump's July 25th phone call with Ukraine's president. Karen Kafa reports from Washington that the leadoff witness had concerns after he listened in on the conversation.
Without hesitation, I knew that I had to report this to the White House counsel.
Day 3 of the public impeachment hearings, and the first 2 witnesses aren't holding back when it comes to how they felt about that July 25th phone call between President Donald Trump and Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky.
I found the July 25th phone call unusual because, in contrast to other presidential calls I had observed, it involved discussion of what appeared to be a domestic political matter.
It was improper for the president to to demand an investigation into a political opponent, especially a foreign power.
A theme of the Republican defense of President Trump was that witnesses didn't have firsthand knowledge of the July 25th phone call between President Trump and the president of Ukraine, dismissing elements of their testimony as hearsay.
You saw 3 diplomats who dislike President Trump's Ukraine policy discussing second-hand and third-hand conversations about their objections with the Trump policy.
But 3 of today's witnesses were on that phone call. Jennifer Williams, a foreign policy aide to Vice President Mike Pence, and from the National Security Council, Timothy Morrison and Alexander Vindman, who told lawmakers in his closed-door testimony that he reported concerns about the call within hours and was later told not to discuss it with anyone. On Capitol Hill, I'm Karen Kafa.
David Daleiden, a pro-life advocate, is appealing a multi-million-dollar judgment against him. He recorded undercover videos of Planned Parenthood officials discussing fees related to fetal tissue in 2015 and later released the scenes. Late last week, a 10-member jury handed down a $2.2 million verdict against him and his organization, citing the recordings as violations of federal and RICO law. Daleiden denies any wrongdoing. The Thomas More Society is handling his appeal. In New York, a new abortion law signed by Governor Andrew Cuomo is being challenged. Opponents are saying it targets pro-life and religious employers, and they're going to court to stop it. The measure requires that employees be told they have the right to an abortion without any workplace retaliation. There's no exemption for religious and pro-life employers. They want a federal judge to overturn Cuomo law as unconstitutional. In other news tonight, a New York auxiliary bishop will soon be beatified. Archbishop Fulton Sheen will take the next step on the road to sainthood on December 21st. The New York prelate is best known for his television show, Life is Worth Living, an evangelical program that reached millions in 1950s and 60s. The ceremony will take place in his home state of Illinois at the Cathedral of St. Mary of the Immaculate Conception in the Diocese of Peoria. Stay right here. Journalism expert Mike Rizzo is up next. He's here to tackle ethics. It's all about an accusation against Bishop DiMarzio that the Associated Press rushed to publish. We'll have the latest on the standoff in Hong Kong. The fight for democracy is raging. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. More now on the Associated Press story published last week, reporting that a lawsuit will be filed claiming that Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio sexually abused an altar boy decades ago in Jersey City. The bishop is denying the accusation, saying, "I am just learning of this allegation. In my nearly 50-year ministry as a priest, I have never engaged in unlawful or inappropriate behavior, and I categorically deny this allegation. I am confident I will be fully vindicated." The attorney in that case, Mitchell Garabedian, is also involved in representing people in the Diocese of Buffalo. Bishop DiMarzio was selected by the Vatican to lead the apostolic visitation there to examine claims that Bishop Richard Malone failed to report sexual abuse. Garabedian also represents Siobhan O'Connor. She's the former secretary to Buffalo's Bishop Richard Malone and the whistleblower who leaked records from the diocese archives. She's been active in protest calling for Bishop Malone's resignation. At the same time, Garabedian is suing the Buffalo Diocese for $300 million on behalf of another woman who's claiming she was abused by a priest in the 70s and 80s. When the AP published the story of the accusation against Bishop DiMarzio last Wednesday, Garabedian said, "It is time for the police to investigate the investigator. The investigation should include questioning Pope Francis about his appointment of the bishop as investigator." That said, Garabedian hasn't even filed the lawsuit yet, so why would the Associated Press rush to publish the story? Joining us now is Michael Rizzo, the director of the journalism program at St. John's University. Michael, thank you so much for being with us.
Glad to be here. Thank you so much, Tamara.
Well, let's start by taking a look at the AP headline that says, "Bishop who investigated sex abuse accused of sex abuse." The story is solely based on an allegation the lawyer, who hasn't even gone to court yet, published. So did the AP jump the gun?
We live in a culture right now where people want their news and information fast. You want everything fast. News organizations do the same thing. They want to be able to report it fast and first. But every code of ethics for journalism reminds you speed can be dangerous. The most important thing is truth and accuracy. And I would add to that completeness, a thoroughness in your story. Have you added in all the perspectives from different sides to the story? I'm not sure if the AP had all the context and background that they could have included in this story when they first published it.
I want to take a look at another headline now, this time from the New York Times, and it says, "Bishop named by Pope to investigate abuse is accused himself." If you look at the Times story, they relied heavily on what the AP published. Why is this?
Well, again, we go back to Code of Ethics. They talk about original reporting counts for so much. Don't rely on the word of someone else, even if it's a fellow reporter or another news organization. I think what this calls for is, again, good follow-up journalism by other news organizations. I'm glad to see that there have been reports about the Diocese of Camden supporting Bishop DiMarzio. There have also been other stories where his denial has been forthfully reported. But what about information about the accuser or even the lawsuit? The Associated Press didn't have access to the lawsuit. The lawsuit isn't due to be filed until after December 1st, if it is filed at all. Then we can find out more. But why wait? Why not try to pursue the story as good investigative journalists can do to find out more now, since so much about this story is already out there?
I want to take a step back and look at reporting in general. If you're doing ethical reporting, which every journalist should do, what should the process have been in this case? And we're talking about the Associated Press, which is the gold standard of reporting.
Well, you want to get all stakeholders we talk about involved, all sides in the story. Are they well represented? Bishop's denial was put into every story that I read about this. At the same time, were there other perspectives that, again, could have been reported on? People who are supporting the bishop. Other perspectives from other people who knew the bishop, who might have been around when this story happened. I don't see that a lot of those stories have been reported yet.
And you've mentioned context several times and the importance of context. So I want to point out some things that people have mentioned have not been included, and that includes that there was nothing about the whistleblower that Garabedian represents, nothing about his lawsuit against the Buffalo Diocese, and no background about Bishop DiMarzio's national leadership in protecting children from abuse. Shouldn't that reporting of that information been included? And what's the journalist's job in this? Why didn't the reporter, and the reporter's actually very famous, Michael Rezendes, ask these questions?
I don't know why he didn't ask it, but I think those are questions that people then raise. And that is something that journalism has to face, that we do need to, on every story that we do, check off everything that we need to do for that story.
And I want to include a quick note on that, which is that he is a highly respected journalist, and he led the investigation in the Boston Globe's sex abuse crisis back in 2002.
Right. He does have also a connection with Mr. Garabedian. Again, I think Michael is a very respected journalist, but we do need to, again, step back every now and then in everything that we do as a journalist and say, am I doing it all right every time? So this way people can believe in everything that I report on and know that I'm giving them all the information that they need.
And that's critical too, because when we take a step back and we look at this, without proper background and context, couldn't these types of allegations be hurled against anyone painting an improper picture?
We live in a world now where so many things are put out there about people from sources that we don't know about, information that we can't verify, but we trust the reporter that they're doing that job. Sensationalism counts a lot in today's media world to grab people's attention. But again, good journalism is you don't focus on the sensational, you focus on truth and accuracy and facts.
Michael Rizzo, the director of the journalism program at St. John's University, thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
We have an update tonight on the chaos in Hong Kong. The bitter standoff inside the city's Polytechnic University continues, with as many as 100 activists still on campus. Others have successfully escaped or have been arrested. Some young pro-democracy protesters were escorted off campus by third-party groups today. The city's leader is pleading for a peaceful end, asking the police to handle the injured young people in a humane manner. Over at the Vatican, Pope Francis is pushing people to revive life in the parish. He said the church is responsible for bringing subdued communities back to life.
Le nostre parrocchie sono invase da tante iniziative, dove spesso però non si incide in profondità nella vita delle persone. Anche a voi è affidato il compito di ravvivare, soprattutto in questo periodo, la vita delle nostre comunità parrocchiali.
The Holy Father was speaking to a group of evangelists who had been spreading the gospel for decades. Stay right here for stories that are only on Currents News. The Diocese of Brooklyn's community Christmas tree has arrived with a special message. A Catholic high school senior is pushed on stage to join in a duet with a star, singing a famous song. And please check out one of the latest features in the tablet, the Our Diocesan Family page. That's where you can send in photos of your family receiving certain sacraments, such as baptism, First Communion, confirmation, and marriage. For more information and to submit your pictures, go to thetablet.org/OurDiocesanFamily. We'll be right back. Grand Army Plaza is already decking the halls. The Diocese of Brooklyn's community Christmas tree arrived early this morning. The roughly 32-foot tall balsam fir traveled all the way from Massachusetts to Grand Army Plaza. The tree, made possible through Net TV's parent company, DeSales Media Group, will stand next to a life-size nativity. Mark Steele, the creative designer for the display, says this year's tree has a special message.
It's going to be all red. It's going to have over 15,000 red lights on it. It's going to be covered with red ribbons. Okay. The idea was really to assist with aid to the Church in Need and bring awareness to things that are being absolutely left out of the media, that more Christians are dying around the world than any other time in our history.
The Bishop of Brooklyn, Nicholas DiMarzio, will bless the tree and nativity during a lighting ceremony December 5th. That will take place at 5 o'clock in Grand Army Plaza. Finally tonight, a Catholic high school senior and singer got the chance of a lifetime. Last weekend, Isabel Marat was brought up on stage during a Broadway show featuring Tony Award-winning star Kristen Chenoweth. The Mary Lewis Academy Glee Club singer is an award winner herself. And after some pushing from the former Wicked cast member, the pair sang a duet. Here's a bit of their performance of the song For Good from the musical. Because I knew you, I have been changed. Amazing. The video has been viewed thousands of times on Facebook and Instagram. Congratulations, Isabel. I'm sure this won't be the last time we hear from you. That is Currents News. I'm Tamara Lane. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.